Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the December Grassroots Conference Call. It is the last conference call of the year, and I think we've got off to a great start already. For anybody who's new on the call, a big welcome to you tonight. My name's Aaron Oxley. If we haven't had a chance to meet, I'm the Executive Director at Results UK. For those of you who, there might be somebody new on the call tonight. If there is anybody, do you want to introduce yourself and say hello to everybody? It's not compulsory, I should say.
Hello. Yeah, hi, you okay?
Hello, Sheffield. How are you doing?
Not too bad. Yeah, we're okay, thank you. Yeah, excited. Yeah, indeed.
Very good. It's great to have you both on the call. And I don't know who else is in the room, but I'm just saying both because, oh, three.
Thank you.
So, some new and some old faces there. Yeah. Very good. Very good. Wonderful. Anybody else want to say hello? No? Okay, good. I think one
Hello,
of the things...
this is Amber speaking from London. Hello, it's my second time to join the call. Hello.
Hi, Amber. Welcome. Great to hear your voice, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Hi.
I think it is really great. I think we've been doing that for like well over a year now in terms of asking new people if they'd like to say hello, and I think it's certainly really heartening to me to very regularly hear all the new people introducing themselves and hear our UK Results family growing with lots of new people turning up. It's really exciting and really heartening. So look, let's kick straight into the rest of the call. I'm going to start the call with a quick overview of how our work at Results is going, a little bit about what's going on in the world of politics, of course, because that affects everything that we do. And it probably goes without saying that right now, the election is the big topic of conversation. Thankfully, development still looks like it's remaining a non-partisan issue, which is very good. But the result of the election is obviously going to have a big impact on our work. Now, look, these are volatile and quite uncertain times. And particularly because it's the end of the year and very shortly the start of a brand new parliament, no matter who wins, I'm going to take a few minutes to look back over what we've achieved in 2019, and then later on in the call, we're going to hear from three people who are going to give some input on what we expect that we'll be trying to achieve in 2020, looking forward in our mission to overcome global poverty. So for those of you that are new tonight, and certainly new to the way that Results does stuff, we see people's ability to overcome poverty and lead lives of dignity as requiring several things, four in fact. First, the ability and the right to access health services, the health services that they need without financial hardship, very much the way UK NHS works. Secondly, the right to an education, which unlocks people's power to overcome poverty. Thirdly, the right to economic opportunities, that is the ability to earn a living and build up your household assets. And fourthly, the right to have a say in your own future, to have a voice in the way that your country is run, and for people to have a say in things that affect their daily lives. Now, in 2019 and looking like a lot of 2020, we're going to be focusing on health, as you've heard us talk about quite a lot, and as many of you have been working on in your advocacy actions, mainly to respond to some amazing opportunities that have existed in the world where we've seen that we will be able to have a big impact. But health is not the only thing we're going to be talking about and working on in 2020. A lot more on that later. But looking back over the last year, some of the things that we've worked on together, I'm going to start by saying that many of the people on this call, the familiar faces, should really feel justifiably proud as we look back. And when I think about what 2019 was like and what we've worked on, I really think that it's all about having a phenomenal success in the face of chaos. We've had a change of government, including 3 different secretaries of state for international development during 2019, Penny Mordaunt, Rory Stewart, Alok Sharma, ongoing political deadlock and delay around Brexit, and now a general election on top of all of that. With all of this tremendous political uncertainty, it's obviously very hard for civil servants to carry on the work that they do to keep the country running. And that includes our international development efforts. But the key thing is that they have. And if that wasn't enough, with all the challenges we've seen from opponents of UK aid over recent years, there's been ongoing concern bubbling away that UK aid spending might not end up retaining the political support that it's enjoyed in the past. That's been a feature of the public conversation this year. We've also seen the need to replenish some of the big global health funds over the last year and going into next year, and also funding for education in emergencies. We've genuinely wondered if it's going to really been possible to deliver the financial commitments we've seen, that we've needed to see in such a toxic and muddied political environment. And yet with all of that going on, we've seen some absolutely stunning results. And yes, I picked that word on purpose. Now in June, we had the announcement from Theresa May, then Prime Minister, of £1.4 billion for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. Now that's the exact sum that we'd been asking for, that you'd all been campaigning for, despite us being told privately some months before that we should be realistic with our expectations. There was even some talk relatively early on that we should consider anything over £1 billion as a win, but we always knew that our stretch goal was worth sticking to. There are people whose lives will now be saved because we did. Now then in August, we asked you to write to Alok Sharma, then the Secretary of State, asking him to fund the Education Cannot Wait initiative, ECW. And what ECW does, it funds access to education in emergencies and crisis situations because, as it says on the tin, education cannot wait. So together with our allies in the Send My Friend to School Coalition, we asked for at least £75 million to go to Education Cannot Wait. And literally a few days later, at the G7 summit in New York, Foreign Minister at the time, now Prime Minister, Boris Johnson announced an unprecedented £90 million contribution to ECW. Now that's a clear indication that the work of ECW is recognised at the highest levels of government. That's the single biggest contribution received by ECW so far, but you can be absolutely sure the government wouldn't have felt able to stretch to £90 million without seeing the support generated by the people on this call, amongst others. Now, this pledge is going to give 600,000 children and young people living in conflict and emergency situations the chance of a better future through access to education. And then, a month ago, on the very day of last month's conference call, we were phoned up by the Department for International Development about their announcement that the UK was pledging £400 million for the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. Again, that was spot on the amount that we were asking for, and anchored the Global Polio Eradication Initiative's fundraising efforts, making a world-leading contribution to ending this disease once and for all. What all of this shows is that if we're doing what we do best, we're seeking cross-party support in Parliament and from the public, promoting positive, practical solutions for cost-effective ways to overcome poverty that have been proven to work, that help people to take charge of their lives with dignity, then we will cut through all the chaos. We will empower the civil servants who have to recommend and administer these funding proposals. And we let the politicians in charge feel it's not only okay for them to do the right thing, but that it's actually a good thing to do. Now, none of these achievements for 2019 I've just mentioned would have happened automatically, and certainly not in this year. Privately, and though they can't say this in public, we've had civil servants tell us that they really need to keep hearing the public's concern on these issues, to keep feeling the pressure from civil society in order to get these important aid commitments through. Now, of course, these weren't just results achievements. We never like to pretend that we act alone, but we always work alongside others to increase our ability to achieve change, to contribute the kind of advocacy that you all do so well, alongside other kinds of complementary campaigning. But just take a minute to reflect, either as an individual or in your groups, about your part in these achievements. These are going to save or improve literally millions of lives over the next few years. What a gift that is. So look, I can tell you, as executive director, I hear regularly from our partners all around the world, France, Germany, America, Australia, Japan. They're all just amazed at how the UK and DFID can possibly continue their vital leadership role in international development when it looks like all other fields of UK public life are just chaotic and progress is blocked by political status. Honestly, the rest of the world is just astounded at how all of this is happening, given all the mess. They can't believe it, but they are absolutely grateful for Britain's continued leadership. So when you think about how this country is seen in the world, remember, in this one area, we remain tightens. Just don't underestimate the scale of what you're achieving, and in particular, the repeated successes we've been able to pull off this year. They're really nothing short of spectacular, and they're recognized around the world just as such. So look, we want to keep going. We want to keep on with this track record of success in 2020. And to do this, given the turnover we know is coming in Parliament, no matter who wins the election, we need to keep building relationships across all the political parties. We will be in a phase of re-establishing and deepening the political will to support the changes we want to see. We'll be building parliamentarians' capacity to make a difference throughout the life of the next Parliament. Now, some of your constituencies are going to return a known face on the 13th of December. That's the day after the election. And some, you'll end up electing someone completely new. But whoever is elected, they have the potential to be part of this story and to help make a significant difference in the lives of people living in poverty, and you can help them do that. This year, well over 100 MPs out of a total Parliament of 650 are standing down, and many more could lose their seats. So they think maybe up to a third of the total number of seats in Parliament could change hands, and that would really be potentially quite a historic number. Many of the MPs that we work with quite closely, the ones who actively champion international development issues on a regular basis, unfortunately, they're standing down. Now, that's a real loss. That seriously diminishes the voice that exists in Parliament for the issues that we care about. There's quite a few people on that list, but just to choose three, that includes people like Stephen Twigg and Jeremy Lefroy from the International Development Committee, and Nick Herbert, who's chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on TB and chair of the Global TB Caucus. So we really need your help to bring new MPs up to speed quickly, to find out what parts of the international development story interest them the most, and to help them become the best champions that they can be. Now, together, we will build a cadre of support in the new Parliament to keep supporting the amazing things that UK taxpayers' money achieves around the world. If your existing MP gets re-elected, we need them to know that you're still here, you're not going anywhere, and you still want them to do the kind of things that are going to make a big difference in the fight against global poverty. Sometimes it might not feel like it, but this election is a huge opportunity that we should seize together. And I just really want to thank you in advance for being a part of that. And look, that's it for me right now. I'm going to hand over to Della to give the usual roundup of your fabulous advocacy over the last month. Over to you, Della.
Thanks, Aaron. I just wanted to start off by saying thanks so much to those of you who came to the training in Sheffield. I can see a few of you on the call who were there, so it was great to meet you for the first time, some of you, and just nice to catch up again for those of you who were already in the network. And you just all brought so much energy to the day, even after having some really early starts and long train journeys, so much appreciated. And thanks to others in the network who couldn't make it themselves, but encouraged their other group members to come. So just briefly, we covered the ways that you can engage parliamentarians, what actions you can ask them to take as constituents, and the ways that you can build and strengthen your groups as well. We had a few people from Sheffield, some from London, the New Brighton group, as well as a couple from Edinburgh and Manchester. So it was a really, really varied group. I wondered if anyone wanted to pitch in and just share how they found the day. No pressure, but I thought I would open it up if anyone wanted to reflect at all.
I'm speaking on behalf of Daniel in Edinburgh. He's got flu, so I don't think you gave it to him, but he was very enthusiastic about it. So he was very pleased, and he's going to share the slides.
Oh, amazing. That's really nice to hear. Thanks, Kathy. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I had a really good time. It was really great to meet everybody. I think we had an amazing day doing all the training. It was so good to meet new people, and then we've met up here like 2 weeks, no, is it 2 weeks nearly later? So hopefully we'll be going full force into 2020 with all the new recruits, and hopefully we can do another training session maybe in the first quarter for next year. Maybe that would be something to look forward to.
Definitely. yeah, that's something we're going to be planning. So we'll keep you in the loop when we've got more info. But yeah, thanks Becky. It's great to meet you as well. Anyone else want to pitch in?
I found the day really productive, and I think it was great to see that people from Manchester, where we're Hunter, and it's great to see people from all around the country getting together, and we created little subgroups from that. So it's great to see that even if you aren't that close regionally, you're still constantly making advocacy goals, and yeah.
Thank you, Hunter.
Hello.
And hello guys, Keisha London here. It was a really awesome day. Just really awesome to, meet everyone. Della, Naveed, it was awesome to, really learn what grassroots advocacy is and the impact that we can all have. And yeah, it was just really sort of motivational and exciting, and sort of, as well as meeting new people, new friends, just, yeah, meeting people that can really empower each other to achieve what we want to achieve.
Thank you, Keisha.
We want to second that from Brighton, because it was an amazing day. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it was epic, really. We loved it, meeting everyone, and like the deep dive into parliamentary process, all the different advocacy tactics, sort of when we got to look at them in detail. All of it was super useful, and we're just starting our group, so thank you very much.
You're so welcome. Thanks again for coming up. If anyone else would like to see the slides, I'd be more than happy to share them with you. So just get in touch if you're interested, but you couldn't make it. Cool, thanks everyone.
Hello.
Hello, I can't tell who it is. Oh, hi, Paul.
Hi there. I just came. It's a bit of a long journey, and I'm cooking food, but I wanted to really see and listen to people. There's nothing that motivates me most when just regular citizens take real action, and I can even forget my hunger at this point of time. Yeah, so it's so really wonderful. I mean, I'm really moved just listening to some of the voices. By the way, friends, my name is Pushpanath. Everybody calls me Push. I work with these wonderful people, Della and others, and that's a real honor. It's really fantastic just to be listening. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm all here.
Thanks for joining us on the call.
Hi, Push. Great to meet you.
Push is new in the Grassroots team and is working on a project to do with youth advocacy and empowering new volunteers in 3 African countries over the next year. So just a quick intro. Thank you for joining us, Push.
Not at all. It's an honor.
So I'm going to move on because we've got a lot to cover before we get to the nitty-gritty of this month's action. So I just wanted to quickly mention that we had a group leaders call as well with a few of you a couple of weeks ago, where we were talking about having more face-to-face opportunities to meet up. We talked a little bit about the national conference and what sort of dates would work. So watch this space. We'll be getting back to you with a date for the conference as soon as we can, definitely before the end of the year, so you can all have it in your diaries. I also wanted to thank everyone who's let me know that they've taken action in November by writing their letters to Matthew Rycroft about the Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance replenishment, which is coming up next year. I know the London group got together to write their letters and post them all off as a group, so that's amazing. Thank you so much and well done. I wanted to just check in quickly and see if anyone had received a response from Matthew Rycroft or his office at all to your letters, because I haven't heard that anyone has, but if you have, speak now.
Hi Della, it's Richard. No, I haven't yet, but I'll ask the volunteers next Tuesday when we meet up again and see if anyone gets them.
Cool, thank you, Richard. If no one else has either, I wanted to mention that we have basically had a letter through to the results office last week, so from Matthew Rycroft, which is quite unusual, as we were kind of expecting you to maybe get your individual responses, but this is the way it's panned out. It's a really positive letter, and it's basically thanking you all for the letters you'd sent so far by that point. he just kind of reaffirmed that the UK was committed to spending 0.7 of its gross national income on aid, and they're committed to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. A particular line that I thought was noteworthy that I'll read out is that he said, "As hosts of the Replenishment Conference, our priority will be to help Gavi secure the funding it needs to further deliver its life-saving work." He also said they were committed to making the replenishment a success, which is amazing, and that they see Gavi's next strategic period as critical to help achieve universal health coverage. So I can share a copy with any group leaders who'd like to see it and share it amongst your groups as well, if you want to read the whole thing. Obviously, Matthew Rycroft is a civil servant, so he doesn't take as much convincing as a parliamentarian, that Gavi is a great investment. So we'll be returning to that topic with an action in the new year. So all the info will be with you early Jan. Yeah, so that's it on that.
Can I just say one thing, Della? Sorry, just coming off the back of that. I don't think he's used to getting tons of letters from the public. So the fact that he sent a letter back to our office saying, you know, I believe the words in there are, you know, feel free to share this with your supporters, I think, if I'm right. So we will be sharing it with all of you, so you can see. We'll scan it in and send it around to group leaders for sharing with groups. It's a good letter. I think he decided he'd save himself some time and send one just to us. So we'll make sure that you all can see it. Yeah,
for sure. Thanks, Aaron. The next thing I wanted to ask, I know Kathy in Edinburgh is on the call, and she had some news last week on engagement she's been having with Scottish Parliament. So did you want to pitch in and give us an update, Kathy?
Okay, I won't put a picture up because we've got not that brilliant Wi-Fi, but I know that over the last 2 or 3 years, we've been trying to get a debate in the Scottish Parliament for World TB Day. And we nearly achieved it last year. And it's a Tory MSP who had put in a motion, but it got about 35 signatures out of 129, but it didn't get selected. But he also said that for this year, he would sponsor us having an exhibition in the members' part of the Parliament for the week that was World TB Day, that it falls in. So this year we got back and said, we've got the space, I've been to see the space, and we'll have to see what we can do to fill the space at the Parliament. It's only really parliamentarians and staff who will be passing through, but I think we can try and use that for getting to know some of the people who support us. And then I think Miles Briggs, who said he would do it last year and did do it but didn't get it there, we'll maybe manage to get that extra stage through so that we will have the debate. And Yannicka, the TB expert in Results London, has said that she's going to draft us a nice petition, so that, our motion, so that they'll have all the facts and figures, and we'll just be able to work supporting all the work that the people in London are going to do to help us with that. But it's quite nice because it's something, the Scottish Parliament is still working normally. We at least have got some politicians that are doing their jobs. So that's quite nice. So that's all the news we've got at the moment. But I will let you know if we actually get it tabled for a debate.
Thanks so much, Kathy. That's so amazing. I can't wait to see what happens. I'm just wishing you all the best of luck. We'll definitely ask you to share again on the call if there are any updates. And yeah, best of luck. I can see that Mark from Norwich has joined the call now, and I wanted to ask if he would let us know about some campaigning he'd been up to specifically on the GPI replenishment, because I know you're very passionate about polio, Mark.
Yes, hello there, Della, and hello to everybody on the call. Lovely to speak to you all this lovely December evening. Yes, was it going back to the GPEI action? Was it apart from taking the action, the results action regarding contacting the Secretary of State. We also, at the previous replenishment, built up a couple of polio champions with our MPs in the area. So we thought we'd try to engage with them, to engage with other people to make this more visible. So we did a little bit of, through the Rotary Club, they do this thing called Purple for Polio, which is every year where you plant in October to crocuses, which are purple, and then obviously they come up in the spring. And it's something that you see in a lot of towns and cities. There's one at my local hospital. So we thought that we would take action regarding that and try to encourage our polio champions to do the same, to maybe send a photograph and work it like that. So we also took some of the demographics and videos off the GPEI website and did some sort of Twitter campaign on there, including all the handles for the various MPs, the Gates Foundation, things like that, just trying to widen the network and widen the message. And also then, as I say, we wrote to all our MPs and other MPs regarding this. And also we wrote to our new MEPs, and we actually got some replies back from 3 of them who looked into how the EU were looking into it, and they replied back to tell us that they were going to be at the conference, so they'd be making their budget then. So, and some of these might be new MPs coming up. So I've engaged with new MEPs, shall we say. We tried to get things in our local newspaper as well, which didn't prove as successful as we succeeded, or thought we could succeed in. But overall, you sit back and you learn from these things, and I think what I learned from this action was that I probably should have rung up the MPs' aides and pushed them a little bit more to actually getting them to actually spread the word. But overall, we tried to pack a lot into an action, and hopefully we got some rewards for the MEPs and different actions like that. So overall, quite good.
Thanks so much, Mark. That's so amazing to hear. Yeah, keep going. I'm sure you'll get some media coverage soon with all the work that you put into it. It's really great to hear. Thank you. So I wanted to just quickly, finally, highlight a couple of things that are coming up over the next few weeks, and I'll put all the links in the chat box so you can look at them in your own time. The first one is that the London group are having an advocacy evening and Christmas social, which is coming up on the 10th. So yeah, they're going to be sort of taking the monthly action, writing to their newly elected MPs, well, pre-writing for then giving the letters to their newly elected MPs after the election. So if you fancy going along, I'll share a link. Also, one of our nutrition advocates based in London has been organising a general election hustings, which is really exciting. Actually, it's 2. One of them's happening right now in Lewisham and Penge, but there's another one in Vauxhall on Thursday. If anyone's interested, I'm going to be going along. It's in collaboration with Oxfam, and the theme will be inequality, poverty, and the climate emergency. So I think Sophia, who organised it, is going to be on the next call to tell us how it went as well, so that'd be nice. Apologies, the last one is also in London, but might be worth the journey down for anyone who's really interested. So Ted from Global Citizen, who we had on the call last month, really kindly offered, well, he asked if anyone from the Results Network specifically would like to attend the Global Citizen Awards show on Friday the 13th, which is at the Royal Albert Hall. I don't know if you've ever heard about it before, but it's quite an epic event. There's usually a prize draw to get tickets for it, and he said if anyone from Results would like to go, just get in touch with me and I'll put you through to him. It's basically a huge ceremony that honours the world's top activists, and they have live performers like Jennifer Hudson, John Legend, Sting, Stormzy. There's something for everyone, I think. So yeah, let me know if you fancy going.
Is that the one where Desmond Tutu came in previous years?
I'm not sure. I wouldn't put it past him, Pete. I haven't been keeping my eye on it that closely.
Okay, thank you.
But I'll share the links so you can have a look if you'd like to. So yeah, that's it from me. I just wanted to say thanks for all you've been doing, and don't forget to share any actions you've been taking or any responses you've received from parliamentarians as well, so we're kept in the loop. Thank you. Back to you, Aaron.
Right, let me just get off mute. Thanks, Stella. That part of the call took, I think, much longer than planned, and that's because there was so much great stuff going on. So thank you so much for sharing everything, and of course for doing everything, because we wouldn't have anything to report on if you weren't really being in action. Moving on to the topic of tonight's call. Like I mentioned earlier this evening, we're looking forward to next year, 2020, and the priority areas that we think we're going to be addressing, given the opportunities that are coming up. If you've read the action materials we sent you at the end of last week, you would know in advance what those are. That's education and climate change, funding for Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and the fight against malnutrition through Nutrition for Growth. We've sent you a calendar for how these opportunities are expected to shape up in the coming months. However, with the caveat, these are always subject to change. And each month we'll continue to update you on the latest ways in which your voice and your advocacy efforts can have the most impact. Because one of the things we commit is to never waste your time on things that won't have the maximum impact and have that be delivered at just the right moment. So look, the plan for tonight is that you're going to hear from not one, but three speakers from both inside and outside of the results office. They're going to present for about 5 minutes each, and then we're going to have some questions and then open the floor. When you're asking questions, do say who your question's for if it's directed to a particular issue. You can put questions in the chat box as always, and you can do that as people are speaking. That will help speed up everything. For those of you who are on the phones and can't see the chat box, we'll have an opportunity for you to yell in a question. But if you'd like to text a question through, you can text a question to 0777 56 11178. That's 0777 56 11178. So tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce John McLaverty. He's a man of many hats. He's forgotten more about education than I've ever known. He's the chair of the campaigns working group for the Send My Friend to School campaign, and he's also the education and youth advisor at Oxfam GB. We also have Neil Raw. He is the Policy Advocacy Officer on Child Health at Results UK. He's got an expansive understanding of what is actually an incredibly complex and many-layered field. And then thirdly, we have someone you hear from frequently, but not so often as a guest speaker, which is a shame because he's such an expert on so many things. That's Naveed Chowdhury, our own head of campaigns here at Results UK. So welcome to all three of you to our monthly National Grassroots Conference call. We're going to look forward to hearing what you've got lined up to talk to our Grassroots Network about the coming months. So I think without further ado, we're going to jump right across to John. I just want to see, where are you, John? Are you actually, are you here? Have you dialed in?
I am on a landline. Can you hear me? I
can hear you very well. That's great, John. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to talk about education and climate change and what's special about next year. What do we want to do?
Okay, well, thank you, Aaron, and thank you to everyone on the call. It's always incredibly inspiring to hear what results activists are up to. I think it keeps Oxfam on our toes, so thank you all very much. So as Aaron said, I am the chair of the campaigns working group of the Send My Friend to School campaign, which is a coalition which includes Oxfam, Results, and many of the other large development organisations that you are sort of no doubt familiar with. And next year in 2020, we are running the annual schools campaign on the topic of education and climate change. The campaign is going to launch in mid-January, and at the moment it has the working title of The Right Climate to Learn. If anyone comes up with a catchier title, I would really love to hear it, because that's the one we're working on at the moment. So I've sort of been asked to discuss why is it important to link education and climate change together. And I think this is something which is almost so obvious that it is hiding in plain sight. A lot of development programs working on climate, thinking that the world's poorest people are the ones who bear the massively disproportionately sort of impacts of climate change. That a lot of the programs that our organisations are running in countries are focusing primarily on issues like agriculture and livelihoods. And, in the meantime, education programming has historically concentrated on issues like enrollment, teacher quality, materials and textbooks, the building of classrooms, and so forth. So it almost feels as if historically there have been two different silos in which sometimes campaigning and program work can fall into. But when you talk to people in the Global South, particularly young people, they don't see things sort of split up like this. So like in the autumn, we had two teenagers from Malawi, Jesse and Isaac, who visited the UK. And they were, going to school in an area in Malawi which is severely drought affected. And it became clearer and clearer at this intuitive sense that climate change is rolling back a lot of the progress that has been made in development. So a lot of the progress made in education is being rolled back by climate change. Kids are missing in school because their families' farms are struggling, livelihoods are being affected by climate change, parents can't afford to send the kids to school. Girls in particular are being pulled out of school to look after the fields where their parents are struggling to grow crops. Rising temperatures are spreading diseases. I read a piece about dengue in the paper the other day, and this means that kids are also either being pulled out of school or missing school. Climate displacement is disrupting education. And then when these terrible natural disasters and floods occur, very often it is schools that are swept away, schools that are destroyed, or schools that are used to house people in emergencies, when disaster strikes. So really, the link between climate change and education is becoming much, much more explicit if you listen to the voices from the Global South. And it's really challenging us to sort of move out of our, in a way, sort of interest silos and start joining up both the campaigning and the program work that we're doing. So why are we doing it now? We could have done this almost at any time in the last 20 years because in climate change in developing countries is not new. Its impact has been around for a long time. But there are two sort of things that have come together in 2019 and 2020. The first is like the extraordinary courage and leadership shown by millions of children around the world in the school climate strike movement, which started with Greta Thunberg in Sweden just over a year ago. And, back in September, there were like 6 million children around the world took strike action from school on the 20th of September on the Global Action Day. So this is like an unprecedented youth movement, and it's showing really that young people and children are expecting adults to sort of step up to the plate and to support them and to show the sort of solidarity that they say so much has been lacking. So the youth leadership and the role of youth is really important, and I think the role of youth in the Global South in building resilience to climate change is massively important. And then secondly, next year in 2020, the United Nations COP Climate Change Conference comes to the UK. It's currently taking place in Madrid. You may have seen it on TV. This time next year, it will be taking place in Glasgow. So that really places the UK and the UK government at the very centre of the struggle against climate change at a key moment, and it gives the UK government almost an unprecedented mandate and influence over the entire global response to climate change in 2020 and moving forward. So there is no better time than now to join these dots together. And Semi-Friend is going to have sort of two asks of the government. The first one will be for the UK to play its full role in mitigating climate change and getting to net zero carbon emissions. So that's the overarching aim that we want all governments to do. And then secondly, within that, there'll be a more sort of targeted ask of DFID that we are still working on, but it will be around building the resilience of education systems to climate impacts more explicitly, and also supporting young people more clearly through the curriculum and what they learn at school to become more resilient and more active in being sort of agents for change that will help to adapt to climate change. So there will be a couple of more explicit policy asks of DFID within an overarching umbrella of the sort of movement towards net zero.
Thanks, John. That's great. That's a really a great introduction to what's going on next year there. I think very, very comprehensive. We are going to move on to Neil now. Neil, I'm just conscious of time. We've got 17 minutes left, and we want to leave some time for questions. So, whatever you've prepared, if you're able to speak it very quickly, that would be awesome. So, sorry to put you on the spot, Neil, but please go ahead.
Maybe I should apologise for being long-winded as well.
No. Everybody was long-winded earlier, John. We've all had so much good stuff to share, so no, it's totally okay. But we'll make up the time.
Yes, thanks, Aaron. So that's absolutely fine. So I'll just start with a very brief overview of the current state of play for immunisation globally. So while it's important to acknowledge that tremendous progress has been made, vaccination rates and immunisation rates have stalled, so that the rate for immunisation coverage for routine immunisation services has stayed at roughly 85 to 86% since the year 2010, and we are continually seeing populations left behind. This is typically the world's most marginalised people. So we're thinking about children born to the poorest families, children born to the families with the lowest levels of education and living in the hardest to reach areas are typically the ones who continue to be left behind and missed out with their routine vaccines. And vaccine preventable diseases such as pneumonia continue to be among the leading causes of death of children under 5. So for example, pneumonia kills roughly 800,000 children a year. So despite the remaining challenges, it is important to acknowledge the significant progress that has been made in relation to reaching communities and countries with vaccines that previously wouldn't have reached them. And it's important to acknowledge the tremendous role that organisations like Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, have played in that progress. So since their inception in the year 2000, Gavi has contributed to the immunisation of over 760 million children and introduced vaccines for preventable diseases such as pneumonia and cervical cancer to countries that otherwise wouldn't have received them. And this is key towards ending preventable deaths. So in terms of why 2020 is such an important year, well, we have the opportunity to sustain the progress that we have been made. And that has been made, and it's important to do that because a number of countries' current immunisation programs are very much dependent on the support that Gavi provides. So if we're not able to sustain that, obviously that will have extremely severe consequences. But then we also have the opportunity to increase immunisation coverage and reach those who are currently being left behind. So Gavi is currently planning for their 2021 to 2025 period, and that strategy period is called Gavi 5.0. And during that period, Gavi hopes to immunise an additional 300 million children. And they will also introduce new incentives and introduce new and underused vaccines. So they'll be attempting to increase the number of diseases that they immunise against, up to 18, up from 15, up from 6 when they first began. And during this strategic period, Gavi has vowed to increase the emphasis on those who are currently being left behind and adopt a greater focus on the barriers that we're currently seeing to vaccination coverage. So why 2020 is such an important year? Well, during this period, we'll be having the Gavi Replenishment Conference hosted in June in London next year. And during the replenishment conference, Gavi will require renewed financial commitments from international donors for the 2021 to 2025 period. So in order to introduce these new vaccines and immunize an extra 300 million children, Gavi will require ambitious financial commitments from global leaders. And we'll be calling on the UK to maintain their leadership in that regard by making an ambitious financial pledge. And you've already done this by writing to Matthew Wyckoff last month. So why 2020 is such an important year, and also how this fits in with our broader health priorities? Well, immunisation is a pillar for global health more broadly, and as you heard Aaron say at the start, improving global health and accelerating progress on global health is key to alleviating extreme poverty and alleviating poverty overall, as health is very much a cornerstone for all development and very much a driver of poverty as well. So if we're unable to accelerate progress on global health, ultimately that will undermine progress across the Sustainable Development Goals and our vision of contributing to a world that's free of extreme poverty. 2020 is also very significant in terms of building on the achievements that we've seen in global health in 2019. So for example, Aaron mentioned at the start the fantastic replenishments that we've had of the Global Fund and the UK commitments to the GPI as well. And why that's so important that we continue that momentum is that Gavi will have an increasing role in terms of working with multilaterals like the Global Fund, so that they're increasingly collaborating. And also Gavi will play an increasingly important role in the push to end polio, as they'll be taking more ownership of the polio vaccine. So in order to sustain the fantastic progress that we have made to date, for example, on polio, it's vital that we receive a fully funded Gavi for the 21 to 2025 period. And also immunisation and Gavi as well is, if you like, one of the building blocks or one of the key elements of the global health infrastructure that we're trying to build. And this infrastructure is needed to create a world in which people have access to the vital health services that they need, regardless of where they live. So we're able to build that world in which people are healthier, in which people have the ability to achieve their full potential, whether that's a child being able to live and therefore being able to attain a quality education, being able to grow up and attain gainful employment. All of these factors contribute to development at large, but it starts with investments in the key platforms for ensuring that we're building that global health infrastructure. And 2020 is such an important year because we will see the replenishment conference of Gavi with the need for the financial commitments needed in order to make that vision a reality. And I'll stop there.
Thanks, Neil. That was great. Very, very good. And while you've been talking, I've been throwing some links to the chat box in if people want to be looking at more at Gavi's past results or some of the deep technical details of what they're asking for going forward. Of course, we're going to be providing you with action materials. I'm sure Neil will help write that simplify all of that and make it easy for you to put the asks through to your MPs and to others. Without further ado, I'm going to jump straight over to Naveed. Naveed, do you want to talk us through nutrition?
Sure. Hi, everyone, and thanks to the Oxford group for hosting me this evening. So why am I masquerading as a nutrition expert? Well, firstly, I want to kind of probably I don't want to reiterate any of the things that Neil has said about all our different health work that we do, really reinforcing each other. So I think that's taken for granted that our focus on nutrition this year is not in competition with...
Your voice is breaking up.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I would say, Naveed, if you talk ever so slightly slower, it should make a big difference.
Okay. So, like vaccinations, we're needing to get a large chunk of money from donors this year. And it's really important that we don't see this being in competition, but being working together. Like vaccinations, nutrition is absolutely a cornerstone of people's health, their ability to earn a living in later life. We know that some forms of malnutrition, particularly stunting, can really affect people's cognitive abilities, and that will affect people's whole lives. So I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the facts and figures, but just one I will use, which is that of the 5 million under fives who die unnecessarily each year in the world, about half of those malnutrition plays a part. So again, this year is an important year for finding the money to work on malnutrition, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So why am I speaking? As I said, we have experts in the office who work on this all the time, but this year we've been doing quite a bit of work with the rest of the ICAN movement. So that's ICAN, the International Coalition for Advocacy on Nutrition. And that group in the UK includes people like Save the Children, UNICEF, Global Citizen Results, Save the Children, I think I mentioned, about a dozen agencies. And we're all looking to make sure that we're speaking with one voice this year. So I've been partly involved with that. So it's really important that when Results speaks out on nutrition this year, not only are we making sure that we're reading across to our work on the other health issues such as vaccinations, but we're also linking through to speaking with the same voices as other agencies, but also picking up on what John was saying earlier, being aware of how, unless you have good health, you're not going to be able to make the most of your education either. So just quickly this year, so some of you on the call will already be aware, but some of you are new, so I'll just quickly say that the Nutrition for Growth agenda, which is what it's called, was really kick-started partly by the UK, but also other governments back in 2013. And it's unlocked a huge amount of resources, financial resources, 17 billion extra pounds, or dollars rather, in the world that would not otherwise have been spent on overcoming malnutrition. $1.25 billion from the UK alone, which will have protected 12 million people from stunting. So that's, some really big numbers again. These numbers are kind of quite hard to understand, but it's clear that this is really, really important. But that money runs out at the end of this year. And so the Japanese government have kind of picked up the baton from other countries over the last few years. And they're hosting a conference at the back end of the year in Tokyo. But the money actually all runs out in 2020. And so it's really important that we don't find this cliff edge at the back end of the year. So there's going to be a pledging conference on the 23rd of July around the Tokyo Olympics, where they'll be hoping for governments around the world, including the UK government, to stump up more money to keep us on the trajectory of overcoming malnutrition by 2030. We're really a long way from the nutrition goals that we have, and this money will be absolutely essential to keep going as hard and fast as we need to. The UK contribution, I'm going to stop in just in a second because I'm aware we're right out of time. We're going to be asking for the UK government to stump up £800 million a year for the next 5 years. And that's a slight increase on its previous proportion. That's partly because our development budget has grown and our economy has grown. But we're basically asking them to keep roughly the same degree of commitment as in previous years. I'm going to stop there and hopefully there'll be a bit of time for questions if anyone wants to unpack that. And sorry, it's been a bit of a canter through a complicated field.
Thanks, Naveed. It is a bit tricky because I know we've got 3 pre-prepared questions and only 5 minutes left on the clock. So I'm afraid we're going to have to rattle through those really quickly. Maybe we could, I think it's important we give the people that have those questions the chance to ask them. Paul, are you ready with your question?
We are. Hello.
Go ahead.
This is a question for John. Hello, John, it's Deirdre. Is
Hi
it
there.
enough to ask the UK to commit to net zero carbon emissions by 2050? That's another 30 years.
Yes, a good question. So 2050 is the UN agreed date, but I think consensus is forming that it is too late and that the date should be more ambitious. 2045 is talked about, and then 2030 is spoken of as possibly the more sort of radical ambition. So my sort of feeling is that the UK has a policy to reach net zero. What we need to see immediately is actions which will put that policy in motion, like policy actions, and a real urgency to get the job done. I think the actual finish date, whether it's 2045 or 2046, it will sort of end up mattering less, provided we are making really good progress towards it, if that makes sense. And there's also controversy around precisely what is meant by net zero and how you measure it. That's a controversial term if you unpack it a bit more. And of course, I think what you implied in your question was that even when carbon is withdrawn from the atmosphere, its impact is already in motion and will continue after the net zero date. So the need for adaptation is going to sort of carry on for many decades longer, which means the sort of the development side of climate work it has got a long period ahead of it after the mitigation is successful. So to sum up, I think the answer to your question is most probably no.
Thanks, John. Nice, good full stop there. Clear final point. Jumping across to question 2, I think we have Birmingham, I see Carrie there, looming by the microphone.
Poised. Sorry about that, everybody. Hi. So a question, I think, for Neil. Given the UK's strong historical commitment to Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, why is campaigning still needed?
Yes, thanks, Caroline. As you say, the UK has been traditionally the leading donor for Gavi. However, just because the UK has been the leading donor in the past does not mean it's a foregone conclusion that we'll see the necessary financial commitment this time. And Aaron's alluded to that already at the start in terms of we may have a new government, we may have a new Secretary of State, a new Minister for International Development in the aftermath of the general elections. Therefore, it's really important that we're making a strong investment case for the UK to invest in Gavi. And it's also important to realise that we will be asking for an increase in terms of the hard figure for Gavi, because we're asking for the UK to maintain their 25.5% share, but because the pound has decreased in value because of exchange rates, that will actually mean an uplift in what we're asking for from the UK government from the last replenishment. So therefore, it's very important that we're making the case for a fully funded Gavi to the new government, whoever those ministers or Secretary of State may be come January. And it's also important to realise that financial commitments are only one aspect of this. And we're also looking at renewed policy commitments for the Gavi 2021 to 2025 period. And the UK is very well placed to do that as the leading donor. So we will be driving policy commitments that we want the UK to push through Gavi to make sure that the 2021 to 25 period does successfully meet that leave no one behind agenda and prioritise those who currently aren't being reached with immunisation.
Thanks, Neil. And across to our very last pre-prepared question as we reach time. So we're going to keep pushing on as quickly as we can. Sorry, we're running slightly over. That's for Naveed from Manchester.
Hi there. Yeah, how does Nutrition for Growth actually work? What are the roles of the Japanese and UK governments in that process?
Thanks, Cameron. I'll try and keep it really short. So unlike things like Gavi or the Global Fund, which are multilateral institutions which run those programs, hopefully as effectively as they can, Nutrition for Growth is just kind of like a compact between governments. So it's not an actual institution. So it makes political will like even more important because governments have to be accountable for just putting the money in. It's what's called bilateral programs. So it works a bit differently, and it means we've got to constantly be watching whether the UK and the other donor governments are actually creating those programs, running those programs, and really importantly, in conjunction with the countries that they're operating in. It's really important that it's a partnership. So that's really a bit too brief, but I'll leave that bit there. The Japanese government as hosts are really putting their political weight behind getting that money, but it's really important, as I said earlier, that that meeting in the middle of the year around the Olympics is successful, because we don't want the money to suddenly run out at the end of the year. They have to know that money is coming through in advance. So the role of the UK in that, I think, is to show its leadership, is to really early in the year say that it's going to pledge money again to the Nutrition for Growth agenda and use its moral leadership and the good reputation of DFID to promote other governments to do the same, because otherwise, you know, this isn't an organisation with a budget that rolls on. It could literally have a cliff edge if we don't get that money through. So the role of the UK is not just to give the money, similar to what Neil just said, it's to make sure that the quality of its programmes are high enough and that they're having as much impact as they can, and to encourage other donors to come to the table.
Thanks heaps, Naveed. Look, we're 3 minutes over. I'm just wondering whether we can stay just another 5 minutes. We don't normally do this, but I think we will do it tonight because nobody's had a chance to shout out a question, text in a question, or put a question in the chat. So I don't know. Pete put one in that I hope we've answered in the chat already, but does somebody else have another question that they'd like to ask one of our speakers? I see Kerry making hand motions. No question though. Okay. Last chance. Okay. Well, I think that I'll take that as meaning that all the speakers were incredibly clear, coupled to some excellent action materials. I think hopefully, along with some great links in the chat box, you've all got some pretty exciting ideas about what next year might look like. I'm certainly really thrilled about that. So look, we are 4 minutes over, so I think it's time to wrap up here. I just want to say, of course, a really big thank you to all of our speakers for joining tonight and sharing their insights on all the issues. I want to say good luck to all of you. I hope you're starting to feel increasingly excited about what 2020 looks like and what Advocacy for Results has the potential to achieve next year. I certainly feel really confident that despite all the turbulence in UK politics, 2019 shows us we can get things done, and we're going to do that next year with determined, polite and positive advocacy. So a really big thank you from me for 2019. Good luck contacting your new MPs, either after the 13th of December this year or early in the new year. We hope you'll be able to arrange a face-to-face meeting. They're often the most impactful. But even if you can't manage that, it'd be great to make any kind of contact and start to deepen a really positive advocacy relationship on international development. So thanks in advance for all of that. I've really enjoyed this evening's call, and I hope you have too. Have a great Christmas break. Come back refreshed in the new year. And before I end the call, one very last logistical thing. Because of the break, as is our custom, the first conference call of the year in January is not on the first Tuesday of the month, which should be relatively early. We put it back by a week. It's going to be on the second Tuesday of the month, which will be Tuesday, the 14th of January. So for those of you that are on a holiday or having a long break, where you get a bit of a break before you're back into results work, Tuesday, the 14th of January. Thank you so much. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. See you in the new year. Thank you so much. Enjoy your evenings.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.